Welcome to an all-new episode of the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. My name is Corey Richmond, joined as always by Jason Brooks. Jason, this time last year we had the infamous roster cuts during a pandemic, and 415 kind of looks like it might be becoming roster cut day right after WrestleMania, shedding some of, I guess in their opinion, the fat, or in most people's eyes, the idea of, hardworking people when you're making billions of dollars off of TV contracts, you just want to keep your bottom line looking good. Jay, I wish we were talking on a better thing, and I was just starting off with saying, hey, look at this ridiculousness that happened last year, and also happy Jackie Robinson Day, But once again, we got to start with roster cuts and this company getting rid of people for their bottom line.
Capitalism.
Hooray.
I mean, we'll go over the people in a minute. But this is the same story, same thing we did last year. It's a pandemic, and at least things are a little bit more opened up. People can, I don't think Japan's open up, but, Impact is full on, Ring of Honor is full on. So there's places they can go. But it's a pandemic. I don't know, but I do think they just signed $1 billion, $5 billion contract with Peacock. And they have plenty of money. Why release these people? Some of them I get. I mean, Bo Dallas hasn't been around in forever. And, I get some of them. But some of the people are developing people. And as you see, and we'll go over people who were released last year and how some of them have done well. And that's one of them's in a women's world title match next week. So, Corey, I don't understand. Again, I understand capitalism and making money. I understand that. I don't understand outright greed. I don't understand it. They are making hand over fist. Hand over fist. And they're releasing people who can still work, who are talented, who have untapped potential, who have busted their ass to get there. They're basically forming the AEW women's division. I mean, if AEW needed some women, here we go. I don't think they should touch any of the dudes other than one. We'll get to who, but this is just it's a sad day to see people lose their jobs. There's also a lot of other stuff going on in this country too, that continues to happen, but. For these people who were released, it's a sad day. They worked really hard to get to the pinnacle of their career, which is the WWE for so many people. And now they're released and have to figure it out. And it sucks. And I don't know that there's enough jobs. What if AEW wasn't around? What if we didn't have AEW? Which sounds like it's solid and strong and not going anywhere for a long time. If we didn't have AEW, we'd have so few places for these people to go to. So it's really, I don't know. It just really sucks for them, and especially the women who I feel like really have this untapped potential. Peyton Royce, Chelsea Green. I mean, they're still, I believe, in their late 20s. Like, how are they releasing women in their late 20s who can talk and work? Doesn't make any sense to me. When you're releasing people, that's a failure of the organization. The Audible, our football podcast with Matt and Randy, you talk about Sam Darnold not making it with the Jets. Sam Darnold not making it with the Jets is an organizational failure. And their GM said as such. They failed as an organization for not developing that quarterback. The WWE releasing these people, it is an organizational failure. Bo Dallas, okay. Releasing Peyton Royce, who can wrestle, who can talk, that's a failure of the company. And somebody should have to take some responsibility on that. They won't. They'll talk about NXT being this great developmental brand, and we love NXT. But we're seeing these people are getting developed in NXT, and then come to the main roster, and then they're getting released or they're not getting pushed. And I love NXT, the show. But maybe as a developmental brand, they're not. Something's missing with when they develop people and then when they bring them to the main roster. I just don't understand what the thought process is. And is this Triple H with Vince deciding this? Is this over Triple H's head? Because I can't see Triple H okaying some of these cuts. What is it that happened to get these people released? And how is it going to impact the bottom line? They have a million writers. They have all these other people. But why do you have to release talented people? And they brought in a bunch of women into NXT recently. So like it doesn't make any sense to me. Doesn't make any sense to me. And here's the other thing. Poor Wesley Blake and Cutler. You had the one guy, Jackson Riker, who's basically a racist and homophobic, making these horrible comments. He keeps his, and he sucks also in the ring. He's shit in the ring. And those guys, they didn't do anything wrong, and they've both been released. One of them was released for COVID, and now the other guy got released. It's a sad day. It's hard sometimes to be a wrestling fan. It really is. With all the shit we have to watch every week, some really good stuff, some horrible stuff. And this is a sad day to be a wrestling fan. It really is. We support a company that doesn't give a shit about the wrestlers, doesn't give a shit about the fans, only cares about the bottom line, and it's disgusting.
And I couldn't agree with Jason more, and I'm glad Jason's taking a deep breath, so gives me a minute to go and say a word or two before we continue. It's actually kind of funny. Usually at the end of our show, I promote our sister podcast, the You Don't Know Jackie, but on this week's podcast, our subject was the idea, basically separating the art from the scumbags who give it. We spoke about the Woody Allen, Mia Farrow documentary, and Mel Gibson, and a lot of other, these people in Hollywood and different professions that they do these things that are so bad and they're shitty people. Can we separate them from the work that they've given? Like, Mel Gibson will put out great stuff, but the type of human being he is, on the things that he said in that rant against, I guess his girlfriend at the time, and basically women in general and Jews. He's a terrible person, but he puts out something like Hacksaw Ridge, which is, in my opinion, one of the best movies of the year. Can you go and separate the two? And how hard is it now, like when it comes to WWE? You want to support their product. You want to support NXT, all these people who are working hard every week, support their families, and grow in the industry. But at the same point, you're still, by giving your hard work money to either now Peacock or the WWE Network, or buying tickets when they go back live, how dirty do you feel about supporting a company that basically, anytime it comes to the second or third quarter, right before on now, this apparently, April 15th, they're just going to go and randomly say, you make too much money, you're gone. I mean, it's hard sometimes to separate. And yeah, some of us believe more in capitalism than others. And that's a discussion, for either now or a different time. But it's just kind of like, how do you separate supporting a company that continually to look at the bottom line more than the human beings who they employ? I mean, yes, they've got the 90-day, downside guarantee, which of course, on one hand, they can't go to AEW or Impact or ROH and go, just show up on TV next week. But for the next 3 months, Samoa Joe, Kalisto, and all these other people are getting, it's not like they're destitute and they're not getting paid.
Are we sure?
Pretty much everyone signs a 90-day no-compete unless they forego it. I mean, hey, if Samoa Joe wants to show up on AEW on Wednesday.
Yeah, I just don't think we know enough about that. I think we assume it's 90-day no compete and they're getting paid and all this. I don't know that we know any of that. I know Kalisto's contract actually expired. So his situation, I think he can be on another show tomorrow. I don't know, who would want him necessarily. Not that he's a bad wrestler, but
he can't talk, but Arena Mexico can use another headliner by.
No, he can definitely go back to Mexico and make a lot of money. But I agree. I mean, let's go over some of these names. I mean, okay, before we talk about that, your point about the supporting the company. And it's funny talking about like the good that they do because we're going to talk about Raw, toward the tail,
Be a
a
star,
little
though.
later in the show, and how like that's not art. I don't know what that is. So it's shit, but it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. We talk about it in the NFL. Talk about it. You're a big UFC guy. Like a lot of these guys in UFC have done a lot of, not so great things. Some of these owners in the NFL, some of the players in the NFL, look at Deshaun Watson right now, whether, so it's like, it's a very, very slippery slope. It's something that I myself have thought a lot about. Supporting sports, being a big sports fan for however long I've been there. A lot of sports fans are not great people. A lot of athletes are not great people, owners, managers, the whole thing. Tony La Russa's horrible.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I don't think there's a good answer for that. I don't think there's a good answer for that at all. And again, I was going to say this one more time. The whole capitalism thing. Capitalism is fine. Outright greed, not fine. And I think when we're seeing what's happening here, it's outright greed. Complete outright greed. So anyway, let's go over these releases.
All right. So the women who were released, multi-time champion Mickie James, and
let's do one by one instead of calling them. Okay, Mickie James released. I think that's fine. She hasn't wrestled in a while. She's older. I think her being released is not a big deal. Some of these people being released is not a big deal. So I think she's not a big deal.
I mean, I think anybody being released is always a big deal, but I understand what you're saying. But I think, though, it's always weird, though, that you see online Mickie James and Chelsea Green both putting out stuff on the fact that they were filming stuff to be a tag team and everything else, and then all of a sudden they're both released. And you know what? Let's be honest here. The women's tag team division could use some help either on NXT, which has, a couple of tag teams, but they don't have many. And then when you have Nia and, Shayna Baszler as your tag team champions, that shows a little bit of the need maybe for.
Not even a tag. Their whole depth of their women's division is not good. Let's keep going through these names. We'll talk more about the depth thing in a minute.
Okay. Payne Royce.
How is she released? Now, I'm a fan of hers, right?
On many levels, sure.
Let's be honest. She is really good in the ring. She's wrestled some good matches. She's no Sasha or Bailey, but she's wrestled some really good matches. Last year, they talked about giving her a push. Her and Bianca were going to get pushes. I don't understand how they release someone like that. Like, you talk about someone who could be a big star out of this. I think she is the person, maybe out of all the people who've been released. And I'm not counting Joe because Joe's already been a star. Mm-hmm. Out of the people who are released, I think she's the one who's going to turn out to be the biggest star out of this. She's going to be a world champion someday, somewhere. Female world champion someday.
And then the other half of formerly the Iconics, Billie Kay. Now, you could say Billie Kay is the worst wrestler on the roster. But what she's done on SmackDown with her comedic timing and what she's basically, when they say making chicken salad, chicken shit, stuff they give her, she has been very good.
I agree.
And it's amazing. She had a moment, I don't know if she got the pin or whatever at WrestleMania on Saturday in the Turmoil match, but she was actually, her team actually won part of the Turmoil match. Now she's gone. And I'll let you continue this in 1 second, but the idea of less than a year ago, they split up the Iconics because you're supposedly going to push Payne Royce. And then basically you do nothing with Payne Royce, and she's the number 2 person to Lacey Evans. And then Lacey Evans, gets pregnant, so basically she's done nothing. And then Billie Kay, who's at most weeks, yes, I know SmackDown has been a better show. A lot of weeks, she's one of the most entertaining parts of that show.
Absolutely.
She's gone. And then, like I said, you get rid of them. Why did you separate these two in the first place?
I don't think there's a coherent plan. I don't think there's a plan. I think they're just doing shit. Right? Like, I just don't. Why release both of them? Billie Kay is a horrible wrestler. She is extremely entertaining. She was, like you said, she was a great. I don't laugh at a lot of wrestling stuff because I think a lot of wrestling stuff's corny. I like some corniness, but like not too much. I thought Billie Kay was legitimately entertaining.
Here's my resume.
Yeah, she was legitimately funny. Like that. What Corey did. That wasn't funny. So like she was legitimately funny, you know? And I just not everybody has the and Corey Graves actually put her over a couple of weeks ago because he talked about the difference between Peyton Royce and Billie Kay. And he said Billie Kay has a character. We know who she is. Well, who she is now is on the unemployment line, unfortunately. And they don't have a ton of women on these rosters. I listen, God bless Lana. She's a nice woman. She seems like a sweetheart of a person. She is terrible. She's terrible. I'm not at all advocating for anyone losing their job. But if you're going to release, if I have my pick of Peyton Royce or Lana, like it's not even close. It's like, how could they think like this is a good idea? Who thinks this stuff up? Go ahead. Next, let's keep going.
Oh, I was just going to say, we could add another person to the list. Not that he's been used at all in the last, 500 years, but Mojo Rawley was just released as well.
All
So
right.
I mean, I'll be looking here and there to see if any more, releases come as we look at the shows.
All right.
People who are watching see me look.
Yeah, I mean, Mojo Rawley, friend of Gronk. Gronk left. He gone. I mean, they didn't do much with him. He had some. I never thought he was really that good in the ring, but he had some good, some good vignettes and that looking in the mirror thing that he did. I don't know what happens to him, but another guy, they could have done something with him.
Yeah, I mean, and last thing on Payne and Billie, I think that they'll most likely do quite well on the independents and most likely find something pretty quickly. But you do wonder how quickly were these decisions, like some of these decisions were made, where basically, like I said, she was highlighted in WrestleMania and she was a focal point on the show, yes, as a joke character, yes, but she was a focal point week after week. And then she's just randomly gone. So it's just a little interesting.
I don't know what they were thinking about. I have no idea. As I said, I think Peyton Royce is going to be a women's champion one day. I don't know what they were. And Billie Kay, I don't know where she's going to go. But I don't understand what they were thinking about or what the plan
was. Next person on the list was Chelsea Green, who we mentioned quickly a moment ago. She was unfortunately hurt when they were going to finally look like they were going to do something with her, and now she's healthy again. And they said that everything was leading towards the idea of her and Mickie James being a tag team. But she's one of those people who had a lot of potential. She was a cast-off from the original Tough Enough. She wound up getting signed by TNA. Was figured out how to make herself a character right away. She was in her and Dina Peraza, who got released last year, we'll talk about, who's one of the major success stories of the cuts from last year. They were basically, called up to Raw for a week. Then they were separated. She was with the Robert Stone brand. They separated that out of nowhere. And then they brought her up, but they waited 6 months to, actually debut her. It's just when she's got a lot of ability. She may not be she's gotten better in the ring, but just like, Billie Kay, her work outside with character development was so good, especially like I said, in Impact.
No, she's good in the ring. I think she's good in the ring. I don't think she's Billie Kay. I mean, I love Billie Kay, but
no, not Billie Kay.
No, I think she's
I
think she's good in the ring. Here and again, and I don't want to do this, and I know I'm gonna sound like an asshole. I don't want anyone to be released. But if you're telling me we could release Dana Brooke or Chelsea Green, I don't think it's close. I don't think it's close. And Chelsea Green can talk. She's got a good character. She's good in the ring. I mean, you talk about people who stayed and then people who I guess with Chelsea Green, they weren't invested in her, because she was hurt or whatever. But I mean, when they put her on SmackDown, they were going to give her a push. So again, I do wonder, and we'll keep talking about the people, but I do wonder what the time frame was for them to say, okay, we are going to sit down and just make cuts. Like, did they decide this after the horrible show on Monday? Did they decide this after, so what is it, Thursday? Did they just sit down on Wednesday and just say, okay, we're going to release everyone. Like I'm very curious about why they decided to do this in terms of the timing wise, or like you've been saying, did they decide, hey, every tax day, and it would be tax day except they're extending it because of the pandemic. Every tax day we're going to release everyone. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Next person on the list is Kalisto, who I think has had a lot of potential, but the guy can't talk. I think injuries did not help the situation. I think that he can have, a good run if he goes back to Mexico, or maybe if he goes to like an ROH, maybe he can be put somewhere in the scenery when it comes to, some of the stables there. But I think he's very talented, but he's kind of another like Mystico, where great in the ring, injuries affected it, and it's just if you don't speak the language, unless you're not someone who's great like an Io Shirai, you're going to get lost in the shuffle.
I think Kalisto actually speaks good English. I don't
No,
think he's
sorry, or either doesn't speak language or isn't great on the mic.
I think he was okay. I think he was fine. I think he was. I mean, Lindsay Dorado and Grandma Talik. Grandma Talik doesn't speak any English, I don't think, but he's fantastic in the ring. So maybe whatever. They wanted to keep a couple of the masked guys, or as Jericho calls them, the gimmick guys. Yeah, I mean, I think he'll be fine in Mexico. He'll be able to go down there, use the WWE name. To be a headliner, and I don't know if they're doing shows. I don't know what the deal is with Mexico because they have a lot of issues with the pandemic. But I do think they'll be. I do think he'll be okay. In Mexico. I don't know what he does in the States, but he can go to New Japan, do the juniors. So I don't know. I think he's got some. I think he's got some options.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up somewhere and we go, "Wow, look at this guy! Give him a manager and." Maybe he can do something interesting. Maybe like an MLW or something. But the next person on the list is Tucker. I think Sean Ross Sapp from Fightful.com had the best when he said earlier today, we're going to see him like on Dark in like 90 days and be like, oh my God, this guy could actually wrestle. I mean, this is by far the guy on the list that most likely when people look and they'll be like, oh, it's Tucker. He was the second banana to Otis. But you know what? Is Otis doing that much better since, he's lost, Tucker? I mean, Tucker is a decent athlete. He never really got the fair shake. Once they got split, he became just one of the guys who chased after R-Truth. Hopefully he finds another job. Maybe NWA might be a good fit for him, or maybe an MLW. We'll see what he becomes, but I mean, I'm not sure what he is. Never really I don't think he really ever got a chance once he left the tag team.
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking at something. I think Tucker is actually like not bad on the mic. Interestingly enough, I don't think he's good in the ring, but now I do think Otis has had a nice run with Chad Gable. I think as a tag team, they've actually had a nice run, but yeah, I mean, he's not one I'm crying over, to be honest with you. Again, I don't want anyone to lose their job, but he's not one I'm crying over.
Wesley Blake, I think we might have mentioned at the very top of the show, or we did in our pre-show conversation. Don't know, so we'll talk about him here for a second. But was one half of the Forgotten Sons. I believe he was also with Buddy Murphy back in the day in NXT.
He was. They had a tag team with Alexa Bliss as their manager.
Right. I always thought that Wesley Blake was a good performer. Hopefully he picks up somewhere. I don't see him getting signed by like an AEW or a Ring of Honor right away. Maybe he does some like dark matches or like an NWA or an Impact. I can see maybe picking up with his former tag team partner from Forgotten Sons, because I think they were a good team. I don't know if you mentioned this, like I said beforehand, but it's amazing. The guy who is the racist scumbag of the group still has a job and is getting pushed. And the two guys who, one unfortunate circumstance with COVID, and him, which just gets budget concerns when you're, making $1 billion off of TV contracts. He's unfortunate with the company. And like I said, I think the two of them can tag together and have a future, but I think it might take a little while for them to actually go somewhere that will get their names right back out there again.
I can see them being a tag team in Impact. I don't think that would be Impact just lost Reno Scum. They left. So I could easily see them slotting in as like a tag team and being fine. So I think he'll be okay. He'll never be a star, but a good hand.
Bo Dallas was the former NXT.
God bless Bo Dallas. I mean, you talk about a guy You talk about a guy who should have been released 5 cuts ago. He's been just hanging on. He started his own business. I mean, that's been out there. I think he knew this was coming.
Tyler.
Yeah, he knew this was, well, whatever his business is. Home selling, what is he? Real estate agent? I don't know what.
Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that.
So God bless him. He started his own thing. He made a couple bucks with the WWE. Found a woman he enjoys, who a lot of people enjoy apparently. So the internet goes wild. The internet goes wild with Liv Morgan. I don't see it necessarily.
All right. But let's talk more. Okay.
But no. So good. Good for him. I mean, his release makes some sense to me. They haven't used him in forever. So, yeah, again, never want to see anyone lose their job, but I think he's probably, I don't see him signing anywhere. Maybe he does indie dates and stuff like that.
Some of the stuff I read is he was looking to mostly retire.
Yeah. I think maybe he does indies or something like that. What I was gonna say, but I don't see him ever being like he's not signing to AEW. Maybe he does a dark match. Maybe he wrestles for fun to be active and whatever, but I don't see him ever being a full-time wrestler in a company.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, maybe he does some stuff with Joe Henning on the Indies, who got released last year at this time. And the last person on the list, as far as we know right now, the big name, one of the best guys on the mic, and he was by far most likely the best guy of the commentary team. And I love how people were talking about, all right, maybe they weren't sure about his medical, and maybe that's why they released him. Because, I mean, he says he wants to wrestle, and WWE has, is very shaky when it comes to letting guys work when they don't, at first. But Samoa Joe was released, a guy who a couple of years ago, he was brought in for NXT for a couple of shows and then, basically became their champion, has had great work on the main roster. Unfortunately, once again, injuries has affected his run. He was doing commentary over, I guess, the last 7 or 8 months minimum. I really, if he's healthy, he should when 90 days is up, I would not be surprised to see him in anywhere he wants to go.
Yeah, the 2 people from this list who someone should pick up immediately are Samoa Joe and Peyton Royce. Those are the 2. Those are the 2 people who could be world champion.
I would say Chelsea Green as well, but I see.
Yeah, Chelsea Green. Yeah, Chelsea Green as well. You're right, Chelsea Green for sure. Those are the 3 people who should be picked up somewhere immediately. But one thing is with Samoa Joe that we don't know is, and I thought he was pretty good on commentary, actually.
Pretty good.
I don't know why they broke that. I mean, Saxon was annoying, but I think Joe, and I thought Tom Phillips, we'll talk about this Adnan Kirk. I mean, he is fucking horrible, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But I thought the team was all right. They even had Samoa Joe doing interviews with Cole and O'Reilly. And I thought those interviews were good before their match in NXT. The thing I don't understand is why not keep him as a commentary guy? Why not put him in there with Michael Cole on Fridays? Or maybe Samoa Joe said he wants to wrestle and they said no. It's possible the Samoa Joe thing could be something different. I think that's possible. I don't know, but I think it could be some level of him being hurt, wanting to come back, them saying no, because it seems insane to me that they're just like, we're going to release this super talented guy who's good on the mic and one of the best in-ring guys in the history of pro wrestling. It doesn't make sense to me unless he's hurt or something. So, or, WWE we know is very conservative with the medical doctors and with Daniel Bryan and these guys who have been hurt, who they don't want to have wrestle because they fear they're going to have long-term injuries and they can come back into the WWE, like, we've seen with the concussion stuff. So that one I'm willing to say, like, I don't know enough information about. The other ones are just, these other, Chelsea Green and Payne Royce are just ridiculous.
Agreed. And the 90-day no-compete clause falls on July 14th. Last year was very easy when it came to Impact Wrestling. Their Slammiversary show was basically 3 days later, and they were able to do a lot with, setting up, bringing in all the big surprises from the cuts, and basically got, their biggest buy rate, I think, to date at that point for the show. So I guess what I would ask you is how quickly, like July 14th is a Wednesday. Do you expect like on that first day possible, do you expect like a Samoa Joe or Payne Royce, Chelsea, specifically Samoa Joe? Do you expect to see him on AW, or do you think like someone like Samoa Joe will play the field a little while, do like a reunion thing and Impact for a couple of months, and
I have no idea. I mean,
what's your gut
that's just random guessing. Here's what I want to see happen. I
Okay.
want to see Samoa Joe, and someone brought this up on Twitter. And we are on Twitter at WorkShootPod. I want to see him in the G1. That's where I want to do. I want to see him in the G1. They've talked about, the guy Jins who've come over. Moxley, I thought really added a lot to the G1 a couple of years ago. I think this year's G1 was different. Obviously, they couldn't have people come over. I think it missed something this year. And I think Moxley brought that. And I think Joe would bring that. I think Omega's brought that in the past, just like a different flavor. So I'd love to see Joe in the G1. That's what I would like to see as a fan. What he does, I don't know. AEW has a million dudes there. So, I don't know. Impact, he's been there, done that. Ring of Honor has money to spend, and he could wrestle a, pretty light schedule. I think they do like a month. They tape all their shows for a month or so. He just goes in there for a weekend, and then he can rest his body up for the rest of the time, and they pay pretty well. So I can see Ring of Honor being a possibility, and of course they'd love
him versus Jonathan Gresham would be like unbelievable.
Yeah. So I could see Ring of Honor. Impact I don't see. And AEW, obviously anyone could go to AEW, but I really would love to see him in New Japan. Maybe have him being strong a little bit, have him be in New Japan strong a little bit, being in, to be in the US until things get open up in Japan. That's what I would like to see. Maybe part Ring of Honor, part New Japan. I think that'd be really, really cool for him. I think that'd be really, really dope for him. Peyton Royce, AEW needs to just sign him right now. Like, I know you can actually wrestle for a few months, but we're gonna sign you like right now, so nobody else signs you. And then Peyton Royce makes a debut. Maybe she becomes part of the Pinnacle or whatever. With
her husband is part of So.
Yes. So, I could see something like that happening. And then Chelsea Green, I think she'll be somewhere. Maybe go back to Impact or whatever. And the rest of these guys and gals, I'm not sure they really make enough of an impact. Yeah,
I can see that. And like I said, I think it would be amazing if you're right with Samoa Joe going to New Japan and working one of those deals where he can work pretty much anywhere. I think it would be awesome if, July 14th, we see, Moxley standing in the ring still as, the champion for New Japan, US champion. They have a confrontation, and you find out that he's showing up on New Japan Strong, and they're setting up a program.
Yeah,
United States title. Yeah. And, working from there until they can have open board of the visas and everything. That would be amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I do suspect, based off of, and we'll move on after this, but I suspect based off of what Joe did last time, because remember, Joe wasn't contracted to NXT. Right. He came there on a per appearance basis, and he did so well. I don't know how they didn't think he'd do this well, but he did so well in so many t-shirts. They're like, holy shit, that's right. And then, obviously he signed a contract. So, I suspect that he's going to do some type of playing the field thing. That's what I think he should do. And that's what I think he's probably going to do. He's made a lot of money, I'm sure. Like, he's good. I think now he just wants to do his own thing. So I expect him to be more of a free agent, but who knows?
And Deanna Peraza put it best on Twitter. She wrote, if we've learned anything this year, if when one door shuts, another one opens. I'm rooting for everyone today. I realize their true potential wherever they may land up. So
yeah, and Peraza this is really hard for her because Chelsea Green's her best mate. So they're very, very close.
Absolutely. So
and one other thing,
yeah.
Chelsea Green is engaged or married to Zack Ryder. Yeah. So it's funny. He was released last year and she's released this year. Very interesting. Same thing. Sean Spears released last year. His wife released this year. Oh boy. You boy, Charlotte, you better watch out.
You're dating anybody, don't get too comfortable. But so just quickly, like I said, this was last year. The same thing happened right before the WWE declared quarterly dividends for the first quarter. Earnings, which I believe they had a nice little one again today. I think it was like 12 and 13 cents, which is quite nice, I guess, when it comes to the stock market. So they're doing great. But so last year at this time, some of the big names that were released were Rusev, the Good Brothers, Dina Perazzo, and Hawkins and Ryder. So those were some of the big ones. Looking at it now, I mean, I think they're all doing pretty well. So, it's not like this is the end of the road for these people. And the other one is Drake Maverick, who actually made a storyline about. And I think someone asked on Twitter earlier today, I was seeing online, could you see them doing this again with another person, a Drake Maverick type of storyline? I don't think they do something like that 2 years in a row, but do you think there's a possibility they can do something like that where they give somebody back their job, and it of course was initially supposed to be that, but they can work it into like another story? Or do you think that would just be kind of ugly again, doing something like that, just even though it worked once, but then it would just feel like, a little shitty?
I think the one difference is Maverick was in NXT at the time, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that was maybe a little bit of Triple H, like pulling and whatever. The fact these people are all in a main roster. And I don't know how it works with contracts. I have no idea. We know what every athlete makes. WWE, we have no idea what anybody makes. But it seems like when they move from NXT to the main roster, they sign new contracts. So part of this is I don't know if Drake Maverick was getting a main roster contract or an NXT contract. So I think that's also kind of a part of this too. So I think that, and that's also maybe why he resigned. They paid him less money. I don't know, but yeah, I don't see that happening. Maybe, yeah, I don't see that happening.
Oh, and two other big ones was Leo Rush and EC3, who both are doing, quite well.
Yeah,
And,
it's funny.
Eric Young, who wound up winning the Impact title.
I would. That is interesting, Corey. That's an interesting list. I'd say most of those people have had some level of success. They're not nowhere.
Yeah,
There's somewhere making a living, doing what they love. So I mean, and some of them are doing it at a very high level. Leo Rush is all over the place. I think Miro's gonna get a big push here at some point. I think he'll be AEW champion, in the next year and a half, 2 years. I know they like keeping the title on people, but maybe he's a challenger for the TNT title, Darby Allin. So I could see him being, getting a shot there. So yeah, no, I think a lot of these people have done really, really well for themselves.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I guess what I'm just saying here is that just because the person was released doesn't mean their career is over, and you never know. Someone in 90 days or could be brought back, so you never know if maybe they need somebody that they don't get brought back if somebody else doesn't pick them up. So Jay, before we close the door on this, is there anybody else that you see that could be? Well, let me rephrase that. Last year, after the basically everybody had cut, the following day we found out there were some NXT cuts that were made. So there could be more coming up tomorrow. And the main differences was that a 90-day for main roster, 30-day for NXT. That's why Dina Perazzo was able to sign right away with Impact, because she was on the even though she did like one show on the main roster, she was still an NXT talent. So I mean, it could be interesting to see how it works out. So we might see some other names, maybe low level people as well.
Yeah, and just one quick note. Yeah, I don't want to speculate on who could be fired. I don't really feel great doing that. But Aleister Black is someone who was on the chopping block, and now it appears that he's shooting vignettes, and they're gonna maybe give him a push. So I think that's interesting. Also, we haven't seen Zelina Vega yet. I don't know if her time is up.
Oh, it has, yeah.
So I think the wrestling industry could really, really change. And I think I think all these companies could really benefit, but I think Impact, because they've lost some people, could really benefit. I think Ring of Honor can benefit, although they're really re-signing their people. I think MLW can benefit because MLW has a very, very, they don't have a deep roster at all. They only do an hour show, but they don't have a deep roster of like really good people. Like they've pushed this Calvin Techman guy who I think stinks. So, they could use a couple of these people. So we'll see how it all works out. But there's definitely a lot of things in play here.
Absolutely. And we'll continue to look on. And if we see any information in the next day or so, follow us, of course, on Twitter at WorkShootPod. We will let you know any more that come up in the next day. But Jay, I know you wanted to speak about as a small measure and as a bigger topic, the disaster known as usually most wrestling fans' favorite night of the year, the Raw after WrestleMania. I'll let you take the floor.
So there's a quote from Jason Powell. I always read his reviews after the shows. ProWrestling.net. We've former guest of the show, friend of the show, and I read his reviews every week and his hits and misses, and some stuff I agree with, some stuff I don't agree with. Sure. Here's what he said about the overall show.
Oh boy.
WrestleMania weekend was a success. Night one was better than night two, but I was left optimistic about WWE due to the quality of the shows. I went into Raw hoping they had something planned or to build momentum over what they generate over the weekend. They really needed a big angle or a hot debut to help offset the hangover of going from 25,000 fans back into the Thunderdome. But at a minimum, they needed to deliver a good show to set the post-WrestleMania course. And I felt this way, and I think I noted this at Work Shoot Pod. Instead, we got a momentum-killing, soul-crushing abomination of a show. That was his quote. That's what it was. That's what it was. It was the worst post-WrestleMania Raw that I've seen maybe in my lifetime. And so I want to get your thoughts on that.
Sure.
But every week we talk about the same thing, right? Raw's got a formula now. And I think more so than ever before, it's really got a formula. And they're just doing the same shit every week. We got Bruce Pritchard, who was there in the 80s and the 90s. We got John Laurinaitis back again. Vince has got his people. Kevin Dunn's been there forever. He's got his people he likes, and that's kind of who he's going with. And the idea that we complain about Raw every week, I mean, Corey, this is the show. It's not going to change. There's not going to be, as long as Vince is there and running the show's not going to change. This is going to be it. So my question for you is, can you stomach that? Can you be okay saying, hey, I've watched Raw for, 30 years, 25, however long it's been on. I've watched Raw for all these years, and now we're at a point where until the show changes, I don't think I can watch. Because, Corey, I'll be honest, we do this wrestling podcast. We mostly focus on AEW and NXT. That's why we started this show again. I don't know that I can stomach watching Raw every week anymore. I don't think so. I can, segments here and there, good matches here and there. The show was so bad. It's just not a good show. And so that's where I'm at. I don't think I can stomach watching the show every week and putting myself through it every week and getting mad every week. Where are you at?
I think someone I don't know who said it, but put it best. AEW Dark Elevation sounds like the thing I should be watching on Mondays. I thought that there was one good thing on Monday Night Raw this week and only one good thing. Yes, the three-way at the end of the show, was it passable? Sure, it was fine. But the Charlotte Flair promo saying that, she's back, and, of course, it's revisionist history because of COVID and the false, pregnancy test. But, saying, what, she challenged Asuka and she never got a response and everything else with the Lacey Evans stuff. I thought that was a really good promo and setting up the idea of the future what the women's division is going to be for the short term. Of course, people can say that, why do we have to see, Charlotte for the 400th time? She's going to overshadow everybody else in the division and this and that.
But Corey, you're looking at it
on the show.
I'm not talking about macro. I'm not talking about micro. It was fine. She did, the promo was fine, even though they had a match and she came in interrupted. She's throwing shoes. It was fine. I'm talking about watching this show every week again. We're always going to pick.
I get what you're saying. I was going to give you that point on that. But I was just saying, on the one show, only good thing on the night after WrestleMania with no surprises.
I mean, Retribution. That's our big thing is Retribution. Why did they break the Hurt Business up in the first? Now they got Retribution doing their damage. Oh my god! All right. Anyway, on a macro level, right. Watching the show every week. Where are you at?
I don't. You know what? I think you got to give it until Backlash to say what is the direction they're going and where are things going. But I can honestly say that if things don't get better, I have no problem making this a show about NXT and AEW, MLW, ROH, if they're doing something with Impact, things that make us happy. Because you know what? We're doing a show for, yes, the average fan and also the marks. But if they're not giving anything worth watching, and we're going back to the way it was during the worst times, and it's just the cronyism of Vince McMahon, yes, trusting the people he trusts in basically his foxhole when things get bad, and Pritchard and John Laurinaitis, this show is becoming unwatchable. And like I said, I know that you have to, I always say, let's see what happens. Let's give it a couple of weeks. But Raw has been terrible. Pre-pandemic, it wasn't very good. No. We all thought, you know what, some of the stuff that was going on when Paul Heyman was in charge and getting the catering crew out of catering and actually letting them do stuff. And then Paul Heyman was basically taken out back and shot and given a new life on SmackDown as, you know, part of the head of the table gimmick, which he's doing very well with. But it's just, you see guys like Aleister Black sitting on the sideline for basically, you know, since the draft. You see guys like Cien Almas, who have now been released. It's just there's no faith that what's happening on the Raw brand makes you want to watch. And like I said, I'm going to give it till Backlash to see if there's something that happens. But I'm with you. If they don't get their stuff turned around, I'll read reviews. I'll watch, YouTube videos. I'll still watch all the matches on the pay-per-views because that's what we do on Peacock. But I don't see any reason to cover the show.
And Corey, here's the thing. If I'm already out, so I've already made my thing clear. WWE WrestleMania Backlash. I don't understand that name. If there were fans in the crowd, they just wouldn't put up with this. I mean, the Raws were not great pre-pandemic, but they were mostly passable.
Right.
Do you think? I don't think the fans would stand up for this. There's no gauge for there's no audience. I understand that, but I don't think half the, I don't want to say half the stuff, but I think a lot of this stuff would not stand if there were fans. I really don't. And maybe when fans are back, it's when I can invest again. But they're going to be in the Thunderdome till July. I mean, it's April. That's a long freaking time for them to be in the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
So
friend of the podcast and former guest Brian Drake, the Fantasy Hustle podcast, when he was on, said, watching stuff in the pandemic era. This is a couple of months back. It was super hard. Super hard for him. And I think we used that almost as an excuse for a while, the pandemic. But now you can't. After a while, you have to go and figure out what works and doesn't. And I think the worst that might have happened was, unless your name was Hulk Hogan, and we know why his problems, just being a scumbag, person, not a lot of things were booed at WrestleMania. So it gives a false sense of security to WWE, saying that the fans love everything. If you look at it, I mean, yes, MSK was booed on Tuesday for some reason we don't understand. But for the most part, most things at WrestleMania were positively received. And I think that's the worst thing that could happen. It was when you have a crowd and they basically have the self-reassurance that everything we're doing is working. Why, if you're Vince McMahon, do you change? If when you do have a live crowd, they don't say anything, and then you get, I know it's a post-Mania show and you get the bump, but when you go from an average of a 1.7 in your ratings, and you get over a 2 for the first time in forever in a day, if you're Vince McMahon, you're like, oh my God, everything I'm doing is right. And I think Brian Alvarez has said in the past, you know what, maybe it's, if you shut off the TV, yes, you're spiting yourself, but until they see that this rating is a 1.4 well, it's never going to be under a 1, but until the ratings, when it hits their true pocketbook with the TV deals, they're not going to care, and they think they're going to do something right, especially when there is no audience. Because all of us can have our fingers on Twitter and say, this is terrible, The Fiend is unwatchable, and the idea that we have a character named Lily and everything else on Raw is bad, but as long as we're watching and we continue to go and support the product by buying the t-shirts and doing everything else, we're part of the problem. And Jay, you're on the right track saying, unless I read something or Corey tells me something's worth watching, I'm out. That's going to help. And, if people like in the Wrestling Life Facebook group are saying, we want you to talk about something, we'll watch a video and we'll comment on it. But like I said, I'm going to give it to backlash. Jay looks like he's out, but I don't see you being wrong. That's the only way things are going to change. If the audience actually says, you know what, I love wrestling, but I have to turn it off.
And I do think, when fans are back, I think that'll change some stuff. Because I think Vince will say, oh, really isn't working. And 1 or 2 nights of fans or whatever, but you're right. The rating improving is like, oh, look at that. The ratings got better. People love this stuff. And that's it. I mean, Raw almost just runs on a clock. Like there's no, and so, I don't know. So I'm going to keep reading the reviews. If you tell me a match is good or an angle is good, I'll definitely check it out. But I think at this point, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's just too bad. It's too big of a waste of time for me to deal with. I got too much going on. I got, there's sports going on. There's basketball. There's
AEW Dark
baseball's
Elevation.
back. I'm not watching AEW Elevation, but
it's not bad.
So anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at with Raw. If you guys have any thoughts, put them in the Wrestle Life, Wrestle Life group here. Let us know. I know a lot of guys in the Wrestle Life group are really pro WWE, and I think that's great. I'm not and I think that's the whole thing. It's so funny with this whole wrestling thing. Like, I don't like the WWE or I'm anti WWE. Like, I think SmackDown is solid, so I'm not anti WWE. I'm anti bad wrestling, and I've always been anti bad wrestling. I think AEW does a lot of stupid shit. But
so does NXT, so does MLW, so does our
So to me, like, I don't have I can't watch this. This is whatever. To me, it's is this good or is this not good? And Raw is not good.
All right, so let's just a couple of quick things before we call it a day. Spent a lot of time on the big subject of the day with the WWE roster cuts. Tuesday, we had the first night unopposed NXT. They got 800,000 plus for their first night unopposed, a 0.22 in the 18 to 49 demographic. Then on Wednesday, AEW went and got a huge rating of a 1.29, I believe it was, and a 0.44 in the key 18 to 49 demo. So Jay, we'll get into some things maybe about the show we liked or didn't like on both nights, but what's your initial thoughts on the idea of AEW got the audience that was starving for wrestling on Wednesday, and NXT went and continued their momentum coming off a takeover? Maybe it could have been a little bit of a higher number, but a first night on a show that wasn't really publicized much on Raw, at least from what I saw when I was able to keep my eyes open. What did you think of the two numbers?
Yeah, so go over that AEW number again. I kind
of 1.29, I believe it was.
1.29 million.
Yes.
Wow, that's very strong. That's very, very strong. Extremely strong. So I mean, yeah, and NXT's number was not as strong, but still solid. Yeah, I think both shows were okay. I think both companies should be happy with the ratings. I mean, AEW should be ecstatic with the ratings, but I think both companies should be okay with the ratings, and it shows you, that there's a strong appetite for wrestling. It's a strong appetite for pro wrestling. And I think, Corey, more than anything, I think as a wrestling fan, as many problems as I have with AEW, I love that they're doing well because it's so good for wrestling. It's such a good alternative. I don't know that we would have some of the stuff we have now without them. And so I really praise them, and I'm glad that they're doing well. I think it's really, really important. and they're profitable, which is wrestling companies are not profitable usually after, you know what I mean? Like, so they're doing great. And so that's great for wrestling beyond what, what the shows are. And I don't think AEW was bad by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, I can nitpick things here or there I didn't like, but
Sure.
To get that many people to watch is really good. And we'll see the next couple of weeks. Again, you can pop a rating, but it's the consistency that's important.
Absolutely. And you're going to wonder to see what people who weren't usually watching on NXT, who gave them a chance, will see what they do next week if they like what they saw on Wednesday, and if they come back. I think it's not the number that you get the first time, the number you get the second time when people find out if they like what you're watching.
I don't think it's any of that. I think it's a pattern of a month or so of
sure,
because things change with our country and our world and politics and news. And so I think it's really a month or so of a continuous thing that to me is a pattern of what's going to happen. So,
and as our social media extraordinaire and also host of the You Don't Know Jackie podcast, Jackie Andy, saying in the chat that the true battle right now is AEW versus MTV's The Challenge, where they are 1-2 this week in the 18 to 49, and also.
And you said that MTV that this is a season finale, right?
Part one. I guess.
Of course, they're gonna have like 5 parts. Okay, but I want once they're done with that might spike the rating even more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Leo Rush is going to come back for the reunion most likely in 2 weeks. So Leo Rush can once again say he had the number 1 18 to 49 thing, but. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens and if these companies can keep the numbers going. And like I said, you wonder who liked what they saw, who didn't. I mean, like if you're watching AEW for the first time and you saw that Young Bucks versus Pac and Phoenix match to start off, I would say, wow, all right, I'm going to get good wrestling on Wednesdays. If you watched on Tuesday as an AEW fan and you saw some of the stuff that went on there, I think you most likely were intrigued as well. So I think both nights showed to new fans what they could be watching. And I thought both shows did very well for first try on their own.
Yeah, I agree.
Anything from either show that really stood out that you want to go and do a slightly deeper dive in this week? Or
yeah, I mean, I noted this on Twitter. I loved the Bianca Ripley Raquel Gonzalez segment. They're the future of women's wrestling. It's interesting that they're all bigger women too, taller, more muscular women. They're all, I think, relatively young. Bianca and Raquel might be a little older, but I know obviously Rhea's very young. Mm-hmm. They are mostly developmental talent, and actually were developed in the WWE. And also, it's great to see, there's a Black woman, a Latinx woman, a woman from Australia, and they're all I think she's Australia, right?
Yeah.
And they're all holding up those titles in a really, really cool moment. Yeah, it was great. And I was sort of chanting NXT, and I never mark out like that, but I thought it was great. And my wife was like, "You're such a mark." So yeah, it was great. That was my favorite moment of the post WrestleMania shows for sure. And yeah, I thought it was tremendous.
I would say I love the moment, and we had this conversation offline that I thought it was a little bit weird having it on TV due to the fact that you just had the two Raquel and Rhea Ripley basically in a blood feud for 3 months, where they were basically trying to kill each other, and like a last man standing match, which was really good. It just felt like, I understand that sometimes you pull back the curtain, and of course you have all the stuff that happened in the past with members of DX and everything, but I don't know. That was just the one thing about it, that it felt like it was kind of out of place. I know you, like I said, you loved it.
Corey, it's wrestling. We know it's scripted. They don't really hate each other. They're really good friends in real life. It's professional wrestling. And I think sometimes we are in on the business. We know what's happening. And for those women to say, I want to celebrate this with my friend and to pull the curtain down a little bit, I think is fine. Now, I think it'd be a little different if Rhea and Bianca were on NXT, the show.
Right. Okay.
If they were still on the show, I think maybe that would be a little funny and maybe, maybe whatever. But the fact they're not on the show anymore, who cares? No one's even gonna, no one's gonna remember that. They haven't even told us on WWE on Raw who Rhea Ripley is. We have no idea if she's a heel or a baby. We don't know anything about her. We know what Charlotte is, because we always know what Charlotte is. So, and Bianca, we know what Bianca is. And Raquel, I think is
she a baby?
I think she's becoming a little bit of a tweener, maybe a little bit of a baby face. So
interesting.
Which I think could be an interesting role for her, because she seems just, so yeah. So I think it was a great moment. I had absolutely no problem with it. I think it was my favorite thing I watched this week, other than some of the WrestleMania matches.
Well, I guess the last part of that is, do you think though that overshadowed the debut of the former Taya Valkyrie, Frankie Monet? That's the other part of it. That
sure, I don't care. I think they should have ended the show with that, but I think they should have ended the show with Raquel Gonzalez talking and then them all coming out and holding the belts. I think that's how they should have ended the show. But Frankie Monet, I think it's fine. It's 1 week. She's got, they're gone now, and now it'll be Frankie Monet and her, and which should be an interesting feud. I'll tell you one thing I was disappointed about was this Karrion Kross promo. He just doesn't, and we don't need to go too crazy into it. I know we're, kind of close to the end, but he just doesn't do it for me. I was expecting something else. Like, give me something else. So he just didn't do it for me in that promo. But he's a champion, and we'll see what they do. Yeah. He does have a lot of wrestlers to go against who are really good in the ring. So I don't think he'll be starved for opponents. But I do want to see his gimmick, whatever it is, evolve. And I haven't really seen that. I think the coolest character in that is Scarlett. So
I understand. Like I said, and we've had this conversation, the fact that he's a main, just like in Elias, some other people, he's a main roster gimmick that's on NXT, and it's so out of place.
I think he's a main roster guy in NXT. I don't think it's a gimmick. I think he's a main roster guy. I don't think his style even fits NXT.
Well, he barely sells, and it's kind of like, it just kind of is weird. But before I forget, a couple of quick things, and Jay, if you want to comment, you can. But a couple of things I really liked from Tuesday and Wednesday. I thought it was a little bit out of place, but I love the guy so much as an athlete over the last decade. It was really cool seeing Kushida finally getting the rub.
I thought it was great. We've talked about, we wanted Escobar to go to heavyweight.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Yeah, and then they set up, future feuds, with Devlin and
we've also said we wanted Kushida to be pushed, and he hasn't been pushed. There you go. They accomplished two things easily. And Escobar could say, "Oh, it was a surprise win. It was bullshit or whatever." So
yeah, another thing that I enjoyed on the other end of the spectrum with AEW, I like the every way that they used Mike Tyson on Wednesday. They didn't just use him for like 3 minutes and just say, "All right, we got Mike Tyson there." They kind of weaved them into a lot of things in the first hour. I thought that was all done well. I truly liked that they gave us a little bit more storytelling on this Chris Jericho face turn, where it wasn't just like, all right, I got beat up, I'm a babyface now. It was like, I called up Mike Tyson and I said, we've had some problems in the past. Let's figure this out. So it actually made sense. And one of the major things we say is everything moves so fast in this company that we don't take the time to actually say, why is this happening? And I thought that was well done. And also, I did think the slow progression of the Hangman Page, where they asked him about the reforming of basically the elite, and he basically said, "All right, I got something else I want to do." And we know that he knows what's going on, even though he's a drunk. Make it like that part of the storyline, but that he's still somewhere in the background, and the end game is more than likely, unless Joe goes there and things change, is Page versus Omega. They're just doing things very slowly. And I like that. So, I thought that was well done.
I agree. I think they just, the Dark Order is just I love them, but they're just such a jobber stable. To go against the Elite, it just doesn't make sense. I thought AEW was a solid show. I'm disappointed that this heel turn with the Young Bucks happened. So we knew Pac and Phoenix weren't going to win. I think it was a bummer they didn't win because I don't know what you do with them now. And so I think that, so that sucked. I still think the Young Bucks heel turn I don't think it's hit its heights yet. I think it was fine. Like the Young Bucks now are wearing these like Congo, these weird, the hats or whatever, those leather hats. I think and I feel this way about the Young Bucks is, I love them. They're a great tag team. The greatest tag team ever, all this other stuff. I don't know about any of that stuff, but they're a great tag team, right? They're an all-time tag team. Let's put it that way. I feel like as characters, the BTE was great, but BTE was really more bits and then kind of being stupid. And it wasn't really like, oh my God, these characters are so great. I feel like when they do characters, it's like play wrestling. It doesn't feel real to me. And even though I think they would have been better extrapolating that storyline, lengthening the storyline a little bit longer to get a little bit deeper into the Bucks, because now they're just heels. They're just heels, and they're coming out and they're moving different, and I'm like, these guys are just, I don't know, they just seem phony. So I don't know. I don't love it. I still don't love what they're doing with them. I think they should have waited longer to turn, but they wrestled a pretty good match. I enjoyed the match. And we'll see. The Darby Allin Matt Hardy match, I wish it was a little bit, again, they're doing too much in these matches, but the coffin drop spot was crazy. And I'm gonna give it to them. Jade Cargill and Red Velvet had a decent match. It was not, it was not bad. I actually thought it was pretty solid. So, Cargill is showing that she can do some stuff in the ring. Obviously, a very well laid out match, I'm sure. But she's got a lot of ability, and we'll see. So overall, they're doing the thing with Christian Cage and Team Taz. So that's going to be a feud. So I thought it was a show that moved things along. I don't think it was anything nuts, but I thought it was a show that moved things along that I still think is doing too much. And you have a women's world title match, and we don't know anything about Tay Conti. We know nothing about it. We've never heard the woman talk. We've never heard anything about her. But she's one that was released that was, you and I talked about her at the time when she was released, and we're like, man, she's got a lot of potential, but it's weird. And she's really showing that potential, especially in the ring. She's had some really good matches. So I've been impressed with her, and I don't think she wins the title. I think that's Britt Baker's to lose, but I think they wrestle a pretty good match, and hopefully they give them some time on Wednesday. All right, so we are part of the great Life Group podcasts, and very proud and excited to be on that. Obviously, we're on Wrestle Life right now, live. So Monday we've got Dong City with Henry and Vince. Tuesday we've got the Audible with Matt and Randy. Can Deshaun Watson stop getting massage therapists? Thursday we've got Work Shoot Wrestling podcast. That is us. Friday we've got the Step Back with Jacob and Leon. A slow crawl here till the end of the regular season. Keep it up, Julius Randle, most improved player, plus 3,300. And then Sunday we've got Total Bases with Felipe and Sean. We are Work Shoot Wrestling podcast. You can look us up. We are on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Instagram, and we are on Twitter at the same name, Worked Shoot Pod. So check us out. I think I'm going to try to live tweet a little bit more now that these shows. I'm not going to watch Raw anymore. And these shows are like Tuesday, so I could pretty much digest. And I really enjoyed that, Corey. I enjoyed the idea that I could really digest NXT and digest AEW. And I didn't feel like I had to like rush through. So both enjoyable to watch. And so, yeah, check us out.
Absolutely. And of course, you could also check us out on iHeart Radio as well. Uh, but as always, there's another podcast that we are part of. And Jason, I swear you'll be on one coming, the next year or so. To our next round of cuts.
Well, I thought that one that was interesting. The one that you guys had about talking about scumbags or whatever and figuring out these subjects, I would really give you some good insight, but I guess I'm
You're too busy.
no, I'm not a main roster guy. Anyway, that podcast
next year.
I might have to talk to Jackie Indy and see if she can get me on the show, pull some strings. That podcast, by the way, is You Don't Know Jackie. You don't know Jackie, Jackie Indy, Jackie Corey, Jackie Rachel, the comedy podcast for the ages.
Very cool. And as we spoke about earlier, this week was about basically separating the art from the scumbags that are making it, and a little bit about cancel culture, on how it's separated based on a little bit also, on your political party with compared to Alex Baldwin to a Mel Gibson on who you do or do not support, on how, certain things may be forgiven more quickly. But Jay, our final subject of the day is, yes, we know that Samoa Joe, the best commentator most likely on either brand, WWE, is no longer with the company, but they brought in a new commentator from MLB, used to be on ESPN, didn't leave there in the best circumstances. We're going to talk about that. But Adrian Kirk?
Adnan Kirk.
There you go. I pronounced it
So
wrong.
I go ahead. Share your thoughts before I go, because I got a lot of thoughts.
I know that he's getting a lot of heat on the fact that he basically didn't know any of the moves.
None of the moves. He didn't call one move, Corey.
Apparently, he was a wrestling fan as a kid, and I found it fascinating the fact that he said he was surprised that so many people didn't, I guess, like what he was doing or didn't know who he was beforehand. I'm going to be like everything else I say. I'm going to give him, a couple of weeks to see if he can figure this out. I personally think they should have done what AEW did, where they had practice sessions, and maybe they did, and we just don't know about it. But practice sessions with with Alex Marvez, who was initially supposed to be one of the faces of the company when it came to commentary. And they realized he just wasn't good at it, and they gave him a backstage role, which he's actually become, actually pretty decent at.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
I don't know how good or bad he can be. I mean, is he Mike Adamle level? No, because Mike Adamle's the worst of the worst at this point. But
Mike Adamle also, remember, he was going through some stuff, and now it's come out that he basically had CTE, and now he's got a lot of memory problems. So Mike Adamle, people rip him, and now we know some of the health stuff he may have been going through. I'm going to give Mike Adamle a pass. He was going through some stuff, and he's really going through it now. He can't remember anything. So I'm going to give Mike Adamle a big pass here, but
I do wonder though what was going on here, because we also know that the guy who used to represent him is basically one of the heads of WWE right now, in Khan, who's basically one of their key players. So I mean, that's mostly the reason why he's there. I'm going to give him a chance. The first night was not good at all. You saw as the show went along that Graves and Saxon basically were calling the whole entire show, and he was just basically throwing to breaks. So I mean, maybe he gets better. We'll see where this goes. I mean, he is a big name. It's always nice to have somebody.
He's a big name. Is he a big name?
They thought he was. And I guess, we'll see how this goes. But, Jay, what was your thoughts? And are you going to give him – I know you're done, but are you going to at least, follow on how good or bad he is?
He was fucking terrible. He was absolutely terrible. At least if you're going to do it, know the moves. Okay, so my thing with Adnan is I've known of him for a long time. He used to be on this show called Ryan Russillo Show. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Ryan Russillo, very famous guy on the ring or whatever. And Adnan was always like a good guy. Like, I liked him. I never felt like he was like this huge sports fan. I felt like he was more of like he was big into movies. Like, that's his big thing. Like, he knows a ton about movies.
Okay. And
so I never thought that he was like this huge sports fan. His knowledge was never like amazing.
He's never done play-by-play,
apparently. And he never did play-by-play. And so they fired him because of the whole whatever Baseball Tonight thing. He does a podcast with Lombardi. same thing. Like he's kind of the host and he lets Mike Lombardi go and he do a football podcast, but he doesn't really know like the subjects. It's like he's reading everything off of a teleprompter. That's the sense that I get from him. And he never did play-by-play. So he never did play-by-play for combat sports. He never did play-by-play for any of these sports. So to me, it's such a weird role. Like if he was like the in-studio host or a backstage commentator, I think he'd be good doing that because he's got like a personality and he can be funny. But to have this guy be the play-by-play and not even throwing into the fact that his voice is just not, he just doesn't have a real strong voice. And there's a lot going on. There's no fans that piping in the noise. What's going to happen when there's 25,000 people and he's got to talk over them? He can barely talk over Saxton and Graves. I mean, I think they should just have Saxton and Graves be the commentators, to be honest with you. I think Saxton, he's the biggest mark of them all. Saxton can call the matches and Graves could be the commentator. I actually think that could be, I don't want to say modern day Gorilla and Bobby Heenan. That's blasphemy. Yeah, no. But I think it could be I think they could make a really fun team, actually, if it's just the two of them. I thought Adnan was horrible. The fact that he was surprised that he got as much heat tells you all you kind of need to know. I don't understand why they got rid of Tom Phillips. And Tom Phillips was not Jim Ross circa 2005, but I think
I know short term. I think they said that there are at least heavy rumors that he was in the COVID protocol, and so I mean that's reason.
Yeah, no, but he's not doing the announcing.
Right.
And he's not the announcer. I mean, protocol to be he's out for 2 weeks. He's not. And now he is still employed, and I think he's doing something else. So I'm glad the man has a job. But why is he not there? Like again, Tom Phillips is amazing, but I thought he was solid. I really did think he was solid. Put the guy who's an NXT in there. I think he does a good Vic Joseph. I think he does a good job. I don't understand why they have this guy doing it. Apparently they did do a couple of practice runs.
They did, okay.
And they said that they went well. But Corey, it doesn't matter, right? We could talk about like nepotism and this stuff in the NFL, how everyone's a coach because their dad's a coach and everything like that. And listen, he got his job, it sounds like, because of Nick Khan, the president of the company. Supposedly he hasn't even met Vince yet. I mean, who knows how true any of that is, but I just think he's gonna be terrible. I don't see this lasting long. I don't. I think if he was a wrestling mark and came in there and wasn't good at first, and his voice wasn't that, you could say, all right, I think he'll figure it out. But the fact that he is like doing this like as like a play, like I don't think this is a passion of his. That's what I'm getting at. I don't think wrestling's a passion of his. And I think when you have people who are doing wrestling as announcers and broadcasters, and I know a lot of wrestlers come from different backgrounds, football backgrounds, and they don't grow up around wrestling. I get that. That's a little bit different. I think as an announcer, I think you have to be a mark. I think you have to like love it. I think you have to know the moves without like someone telling you what the moves are. I think you can't just say, oh, I did a bunch of research and now I know you're not calling LSU and Alabama. You can't, the one thing about with the WWE audience and wrestling audiences in general, you can't fake shit to them. It's got to feel authentic. And I think with Adnan Kirk, it doesn't feel authentic. He doesn't feel authentic. I've never felt like he felt authentic except when he was talking about movies. So that being said, who knows? He'll be there for 5 years, whatever. But I think he stinks. So we'll see.
Well, we'll see how it goes for him in the coming weeks. We'll be back next week with reviews on AEW Dark Elevation. Maybe not. Another week of NXT. We'll see how this Ty Conte title match goes. And, we'll see if there is any bill to Swan versus Kenny Omega, which is next week on Impact. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more. But Jason, as always, the final word is yours as we once again say, enjoy Jackie Robinson Day, and don't forget all the things that happened in our past so we do not repeat our mistakes.
No, they're still happening. They're still happening as of yesterday. That being said, I think we're done here. See ya.